Test 1, 2, 3, 4. Test again. Here's another random stream test. One more stream test.
like to welcome everybody to the public session of the Pelham Board of Education meeting of August 17th, 2020. Would everybody please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to
the flag of the United States of America and to the
and
republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Sue, could I please have a reiteration of the executive session motions?
Yes, the board met in executive session to discuss negotiations pursuant to Article 14 of Civil Service Law.
Thank you. I'm going to defer my opening remarks to Dr. Chan.
So good evening and thank you, Jessica. Really happy to be here tonight and to update the board and the community on a number of items related to the school calendar. They also really have implications related to the opening of school in general and a variety of other pieces of the puzzle that we're coming to some resolution on. I think as everyone recognized, and I've said it before and I'll say it again, there are no easy answers and there's no answers that are going to work for everybody. And that has been our challenge since March 13th. But we continue to persevere and to work together with the administrative team, the teachers association, and our staff to really try to work for something that's going to best meet the needs of our community and best meet the needs of our students. We all so much want them back at school and want things to be back to normal and want to make sure that we do things that in getting to that point, different aspects. So we'll try to highlight some of those as I go through some of the updates tonight. Before we get to the calendar, I actually want to start with just an update on the hybrid model. I think on the website, you know that we've got our, folks who have looked at it know that we've got our full virtual model is displayed on the website. And you know that that's got an abbreviated schedule. A lot of the design that went into that came from feedback that we got in the fall. In the spring, based on our spring experience, learning what worked, what didn't work from the teaching perspective, and very much what worked and didn't work from the student perspective. So that model was designed with a lot of that feedback in mind, and with attention to social and emotional well-being and screen time. That's going to continue to be a challenge for us moving forward. That a lot of the design work that went into that took all that into account and tried to create something that would be manageable for students, parents, and teachers. In-person schedule, of course, we all know what normal school is like and normal bell schedules as they stand. But given the current requirements or recommendations, I should say, but the current need to socially distance, we really felt that given the size of our schools, our classrooms, and the size of our student body and our growing enrollment, that we could not properly social distance if we brought students in fully. So I know folks saw my email from Friday, and that was my recommendation, certainly in collaboration with the board, is I don't believe that we're at a point, even though our numbers are very good regionally and locally, not at a point where we can throw social distancing aside. There's no way we can bring all of our students back and still have any form of social distancing. So that's really what went into the decision to take a full reopen off the table. I think it's important in the best health and safety interest of our students and staff to throw that aside at this point in time. So that being the case, we've been turning our attention to developing the hybrid schedule over the last couple of weeks. And the hybrid schedule is going to be that, a hybrid. It's going to be somewhere in between the two. So what we're looking at, we're still finalizing the details, but it will be a somewhat abbreviated schedule, not as much as the virtual schedule. So we don't have it up on the website yet because our committees are still meeting this week to finalize a little bit more of the detail, but we anticipate getting that up on the website before Thursday night's parent session. Just to give a rough idea, verbally, what we're looking at is trying to align the two schedules so there is some parity between the time the students are in school to try to make sure if there's older brothers taking care of younger brothers, that there's some alignment, brothers and sisters, family members, households, that there's some alignment there so that siblings can help out with that. We also need, though, to remain attentive to the logistics of phase in and phase out or arrival and dismissal. We don't want to have large group gatherings of students. We can't have our normal lining up outside or lining up in the gym. Time was built into there for teacher planning time because teaching in a virtual environment is vastly different than teaching in person. And I would say the same with a hybrid schedule. It is also a different set of variables and planning needs. So we did need to remain attentive to that for teachers as well. So the hybrid schedule does have a slightly abbreviated schedule, allowing some time for planning, but for also the logistics. So, the high school, middle school schedule is going to start, first period is going to start in the neighborhood of 8:20, a little bit later than normal, not too much, and we'll dismiss, full dismissal around 2:15, which will enable all students to leave campus at the end of ninth period. That will allow us time to have a virtual academy period for those students who are on virtual days. It will be a virtual only academy because we do not want mixing of cohorts or grade levels that had been in school that day. So again, more detail will come out as we explain that as the parent sessions, but that's basically what that looks like. And then of course, teachers will have their normal after school professional development meetings, activities, etc. And clubs, I think we've said this in the past, but I'll reiterate it, clubs for the fall will be all held virtually as well. So again, our secondary students will leave campus at the end of ninth period, approximately 2:15, go home for their clubs. Our students who have been home for the day will have the opportunity to join in on a virtual academy period with their teacher to get assistance at the end of the day. There will be staggered on social media going on in high schools in Georgia. Again, our students are required to wear masks. Our students will be given individual personal barriers to carry from class to class. Especially because there will be times where desks will not be 6 feet apart, though we will spread them as close as possible, but we will not always be able to get 6 feet. So those masks and barriers are incredibly important. And again, the passing time will be 5 minutes to allow for staggering. And then we'll also, again, end of the day, we expect to see a little bit of staggering there as well. And during lunch, there will be more details at the high school meeting about that. It looks like with parent permission, we believe we'll be moving forward with expanding open campus to 9 through 12 with parent permission. And then the middle school with the longer periods, 35-minute periods, we're hoping to be able to split the lunch group in half. So half will have recess first and while the other half eats, and then flip-flop the students so we can get good spacing. And we're very excited. We're working on getting the approval for tents so that we can also we've got spaced out, socially distanced desks set up in our cafeterias, but also have tents to use for expanded lunch space, as well as gym space if needed. Moving quickly to the elementary schedule, some similarities there. We're going to have a short virtual office hours in the morning for elementary students starting about 8:45. Then we'll have students actually starting to arrive, a staggered arrival to the elementary schools around 9 o'clock. Elementary is very similar to the virtual schedule. We'll have 2-hour academic block. Then they'll have an hour for lunch and recess, and then another 2-hour academic block after lunch. And then we're going to need to stagger dismissal from the buildings as well. So there's about a half hour built in for that. Building principals will be providing more details of that as school gets closer as well, because there's specific protocols different at each school. And then we'll have one more virtual office hours academy period at the end of the day for elementary students from about 2:45 to 3 o'clock. So again, those students who are home having a virtual day will have a chance at the beginning of the day and end of the day to check in with their teachers. Those in person will have reduced class sizes, so a more intense instructional opportunity while they're in class with their teachers throughout the day. So we believe this will address concerns around screen time, concerns around planning time, allow us the logistics that we need for students to move in and out throughout the day. So those are kind of the big picture pieces of hybrid. And again, once that's a little bit more finalized, we'll be putting that up on the website in the next day or so that will be visible as part of our plan. Related to that, as I said, there really is an increased need for planning time for teachers. Hybrid is very different from the full virtual, both of which are very different from full in person. So in working in partnership with our teachers and recognizing that need, what we've designed as we've tweaked the hybrid schedule, you do recall from our prior presentations, we've split students into cohorts. Students should receive their cohort assignments by now. Middle school and high school were emailed out, while elementary was mailed out. So those did take a little bit longer. If you haven't received it yet, please, today's only Monday. If you don't receive it by Tuesday, Wednesday, parents should reach out to the building principal with a follow-up as to that cohort assignment. Any questions about cohorting should be directed to the building principals. I think it's important to note too, with the cohorting, it was we were able to do a much more balanced approach at the elementary because it's a lot easier to do by hand. But at the secondary, I just think it's important to note when there's no easy way to cohort and split secondary students. When you split alphabetically, it works numerically on the whole, but because students take different courses and different classes, there will be imbalances between classes. So you may have a class with 15 and you may have another class with 6. And some of those things can't be resolved because it has to do with the individual nature of the student choice of courses in the course of a given year. So our principals are working to see what adjustments they can make, making those when they can, and looking at relocating people into different classrooms as needed to try to put them into bigger spaces. So that's important to note. And then I want to move into the calendar changes as a result. One thing I should say, and I'll say it now, and I'll probably try to say it at the end. I know that many folks want to attend our virtual parent sessions. We did have to close them because Google Meet has a limit of only 250 participants. It's not that we didn't want more people in those meets. We were just limited by the technology. There are still seats in the general district session, so we encourage parents who did not get into the elementary or secondary one to consider signing up for that. We will touch on both elementary and high school. One thing I should say as well, these are all district level meetings. Building principals will be having their own meetings specific to their building as we get close to the start of school. So we may not be able to answer every specific building level question in these district meetings. I think that's important because a lot of the questions I saw coming in some cases were very specific, even down to if we don't have lockers, where can my child put their bike helmet? Some of those questions are going to be building specific questions that should be directed there. But we'll do our best to answer the questions, especially when there's a lot of common themes. And again, that limit only came because of the technology limit. So we'll try to get everybody accommodated, whether it's through a live stream or an additional session. So moving into the calendar changes, as I was saying, there are increased professional planning needs on the teachers, opportunities, needs for us to continue to support them through trainings and professional development. So we are continuing with our AABB schedule as we spoke about before, where Cohort A will attend on Mondays and Tuesdays. Cohort B will attend on Thursdays and Friday. And as we've evolved Wednesdays, what we're looking at now for Wednesdays, because of that increased need for planning and training, what we're going to be doing and proposing is that Wednesdays be on days that are full, excuse me, in weeks that have full 5 days. So any week, if we're in a hybrid model and it's 5 full days of school in one given week, that on Wednesdays we do an early release at noon to allow time for planning. You will note when you look at the calendar, and I will put a screenshot up about that momentarily, there are a lot of different weeks where there are Monday, Friday, holidays, days off for various reasons. That early release would not apply on those days. That early release would also not apply if we were in a full virtual model or in a full in. So we're only talking about on a hybrid model in a full week that we would have early release on Wednesdays to accommodate that additional planning and professional training time. So let me share, find it, let me screen share the calendar with you. And I think we were able to get this back up on Board Docs. So that is there if anyone would like to look at it there. Now. And nope, not the one I wanted. We want the single page calendar. Okay, so a little small, but important changes to note. Some of that came from the Wednesdays, as I mentioned, and there's a note on the bottom of the single-page calendar speaking to that. Can you see my screen? Can somebody just verify that you can see my screen okay?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. So, so you'll see at the beginning of the school year, that's probably the best place to start. Normally we have 2 superintendent's conference days. We had moved them earlier in light of the ability that we had contractually to now start before Labor Day. But again, as we look to the year to come and all the incredible training needs that are necessary, we think it's important to repurpose what would have been days off for parent-teacher conferences and move those to the beginning of the year to be superintendent's conference days. It's important within that to say a couple things. We are still going to have parent-teacher conferences. You'll see in green in the beginning of December as well as in March, a couple numbers in green. Those are our evening parent-teacher conferences. For secondary schools, 6-12, we do 2 of them in the fall. And for elementary, we do 1 in the fall, 1 in the spring. So we will continue to have those. We do have a half-day release time on Thursday in December. Plus, we've got these half-day release times that we were just talking about for professional development that happen to be adjacent to those parent-teacher conferences. So between those 2 times, we're hoping to provide time for any parents who need to meet with teachers to have access to them as we traditionally do. In doing an analysis of how we had done those in the past, there was often a lot of unused time on those full release days. So this way we were able to capture back that instruction during those times of the years and then repurpose those to allow us to add more superintendent's conference days. So going back to the beginning of the year, in fact, what this does is we'll have 4 superintendent's conference days, September 2nd and 3rd, 8th and 9th. That then will move our first day of classes for students to September 10th. Our kindergartners this year, we want to treat specially and very differently, especially given the uniqueness of this year. So what our principals have asked is over those first 4 school days, so over the 10th, 11th, 14th, and 15th, that kindergartners we will not have class for kindergartners, but we will have teachers schedule appointments for kindergartners and their parents to come in one at a time, get a personal opportunity to meet with their teacher, to see the building, to walk the building, to do the screening for kindergarten that we were not able to do in the spring, and to give a really much more customized transition in for our youngest learners. So that's planned to happen on the 10th, 11th, 14th, and 15th. Our grade 1 through grade 5 students will still come to school on the 10th. They will do a half day like they normally would. So that will be there. And then the 11th, the 10th will be a full day for secondary students. September 11th is scheduled to be a full day for all of our first grade through 12th grade students. Of course, if we're in a hybrid model, we will have to then divvy those up into cohorts. So there's more, we'll need to verify this as school gets closer. We're likely to split those up as one being an A, one being a B. So more to come on that. We may tweak those a little bit further, but we want to make sure that all students have at least one chance to come in that week to meet their teachers, come into school, and see their classrooms. From there, we would calendar out for parents on our detail calendar the A-B rotations that would then continue on through the year. Moving down to December, again, we talked about the parent-teacher conference adjustment that happened there. Again, same thing in March, parent-teacher conference there, a slight adjustment. And then the end of the year, again, nothing's changed. I will just point out at the bottom right-hand corner in that bottom box, the reminder, if the district is using a hybrid learning model, students will be dismissed at noon on any Wednesday where there is a full 5-day week of classes. And that will not apply if we're in full virtual. It will not apply if we're back fully with 100% in students. I know I went through that quickly, so I will open up for questions at this point of the board.
I have a question. Have you haven't modeled out the entire school year for these Wednesday half days? how many there would be approximately?
Yeah, Alex did some preliminary work on that. We need to adjust it a little bit now that we're moving the start of school back to the 10th. I think, Alex, correct me if I'm wrong, we'd figured out loosely we should, if we had to do an entire year in hybrid, I think we worked it out so we would have an even number of days between A and B. So I'm glad you asked. That actually may result in some, it's not going to be an even rotation on Wednesday because of holidays, because of the way some of the vacations fall. But our goal was to make sure that there was an even number of in-person days over the course of the year. And of course, again, we don't know if we'll be hybrid for the full year. We're planning to start in hybrid at this point in time, something changing. But we do want to try to get some kind of parity between the two cohorts.
That's correct, Dr. Champ. There are 181 school days in any given year, so I think it breaks out to 90 and 91 based on the two cohorts.
Okay, anything else on the calendar? So we will be asking the board to approve that tonight. Again, we'll look as we work out the final details of the cohort rotation compared with those start of school and what the Wednesdays look like. We will come back to you if we see any additional areas needing to be adjusted, but I think these are the big ones. So then the final piece that I wanted to circle around with is one of the biggest questions that came out after Friday's email, and that is, will the district have a 100% virtual option for parents who want to opt out? So we've been working on that. And it was important for us to get more clarity on what the hybrid model looked like, and then to get clarity on which students had medical issues of their own or medical issues within their household that impacted their ability to come to school. So we've got a better grasp on what that looks like now. And again, we're just about done with our planning for the hybrid model. So at this time, I believe we're at the point where I can recommend to the board that we do offer parents who want to choose a 100% virtual option, offer them that option. At this time, given the numbers, given our staffing, given the way schedules work, and given the need to have a classroom for every student to come into, should they choose virtual at one point in time, but then choose to come back into an in-person setting at any point in the year and needing to have a class for them to come into, I'm recommending to the board that we use the hybrid model as the backbone for that full virtual option for parents. So what that means then is that instead of students would, they can be assigned to a cohort, but instead of coming in on their cohort stay in, they would just stay home. And as you recall from the model with the hybrid, there will be a live stream of what's going on in class. So any student at home will have live stream access to the lesson that the teacher is teaching. They will have all the materials for the lesson available on Google Classroom, whether they're in class or whether they're home. And as you saw from the virtual schedule, there will also be virtual academies or office hours, so that students who are virtual 100% of the time will have the opportunity to connect with their teacher for help. So that would be the virtual option, is parents who choose to stay at home 100% and access the learning and the lessons and the assistance in that way. We plan to put out a survey in the next day or so for parents to sign up and indicate their wishes to move in that direction. We'll probably put an end date on that survey just so that we can use it to plan. And then I'd say anyone who misses that email or misses that survey certainly can reach out directly to their building principal to let them know of their wishes, should they change their mind or should they have missed those deadlines.
Dr. Champ,
Yes.
so just to clarify, for families who chose to opt out, their children would be participating in each of the cohorts during the virtual days of the hybrid schedule.
That's correct. Yeah, and I think it's important to note that there's the number of factors at play for us. The expectations that we're going to have of the normal cohort rotation, and actually it would be the same if people were in full virtual, if we were fully remote, are that students basically come to class every day, that they report. We're going to ask, and this will be in the handbook that we're working on putting together for students and parents. The students come to class on time, they come prepared to learn, they come dressed to learn, they find a space to the greatest degree they can in their home, whether it's their desk, a table, not their bed, somewhere formal where they come ready to learn. Teachers are required to take attendance every day of both those students in person and virtual. We're obligated to report attendance, daily attendance to the state, and we have to make sure that all of our students are attending and that any excessive absences are followed up on. So our expectation is whether our students fully virtual, hybrid, or they opt to stay 100% home, that they are tuning in every day for attendance and for the lessons. And again, the materials that the district will be providing will be coming through the teacher through Google Classroom. John, you're muted. John, you're muted.
I think it's very important for people to understand that there's not going to be a separate virtual curriculum. There's not going to be a separate virtual classroom experience.
Yes.
It's going to be the same. It's going to be the same as people who are attending class, kids who are attending class, but they'll be attending via the camera.
Correct. Yeah, that's probably the best way to put it. Yes.
I just want to, I think people need to really understand that. I think there may be the expectation that there's somehow a different educational experience with that.
Yeah, no, at this point in time, and this really goes back to, you know, each district has its unique constraints. And, you know, being that we are a neighborhood school district, we don't have the same leeway that a district that maybe has all of their elementary students in one elementary, where, you know, say there was 10%, 20% of students that opted out, that they could reallocate a teacher to teach those students. We're likely not, we may likely will not have that many students that were able to do that. If we did have enough students at any given section or grade level at a given school, that we did that, we could potentially do it, but that again presents that problem of if a child or a handful of children from that model decided they no longer wanted full virtual and wanted to go back into the classroom, we wouldn't have a class for them to go to, which is a problem. Or we would have to then disband and disrupt existing classes to then incorporate additional students back into them mid-year, which again is not conducive to education. It's very disruptive and not fair to those children and families who chose that environment from the beginning and are now being disrupted because of a change from somebody else. So it is complicated. In a perfect world, we'd love to be able to do that, but again, our structure and the way that we're structured right now is somewhat prohibitive. We will continue to watch and monitor that as people do make their choices. And certainly if opportunities present themselves, we'd love to take advantage of those. But at this point in time, we don't know that doing it any other way is viable. So yes, the full virtual option will be watching the hybrid live stream from home and accessing the learning materials from the teacher through Google Classroom. I think it's probably important to note too, and I know I would just want to be transparent in this, that likely it's not going to be a very interactive model. It's very, very difficult for teachers to teach the students in front of them and effectively be able to teach students at home at the same time. I think we all recognize that. But by the same token, what we wanted was, and we'd heard a lot from parents about them not knowing what the lesson was, how it was taught, how the teacher taught it so they could support it at home. So this approach with camera right in the classroom really is a way for us to address that concern so that all students can see the teacher themselves teaching it exactly the way they want it, addressing the students every day in mini lessons, and so that the burden doesn't have to be on the parent to teach it. Teacher is still there providing that teaching, and then there is an opportunity for kids who need extra help understanding or have questions at the end of each day in both the high school and middle school and the elementary to check in with their teacher from home.
I think it's worth pointing out that we actually are in a very good position to offer the classroom camera experience because we actually were ahead of the curve in acquiring that equipment.
Yes.
And, we'll be able to start, school day one with those cameras in place. I think a lot of other districts are a little behind the curve. It's going to be very difficult for them.
Yeah.
That's kudos to our technology team.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. And they've had our bandwidth.
Self was. 12th grade students will have a Chromebook issued directly to them for, as part of the one-to-one plan. So they'll have it to take home back and forth with them. We do have enough Chromebooks for all third through fifth graders. We're going to at the start by having those in the classrooms. And if students need them at home, then they can request them and those will be given to them to take home. For young students. Older students can manage it better, but the younger third through fifth might be a lot. But again, if a student or parent has a need for one at home, they simply need to request it. We have one for every student and those will be sent home. Definitely they will be sent home in a full virtual model. And then for our students K through 2, we do have additional devices. We don't have one for everybody, but we do have additional devices available upon request as well.
So if we filled out that questionnaire, technology questionnaire, and we have an elementary student and said that we prefer them to have a district device, it would be the Chromebook that they would have assigned to them in the classroom that they'd be allowed to bring back and forth. There would be a different
yeah,
device.
most likely. It's probably the one from the classroom if they're in an upper grade,
Okay.
third through fifth. Yeah, so we'll be sending that. And we appreciate the flexibility. We know there's a lot of unknowns. We're going to try to solve for those that we can. And I think we all just have to remember that, we're in this together. I think none of us want anything more than for our kids to get the best education they can and for our kids' health and well-being to attend to. And part of that is getting back to school, getting back in the classroom, and starting to get back to learning and getting back to routines. So we look forward to working together on that. And even though things won't be perfect, we want to continue to remain partners in that work. So thanks to the community and to our board for your partnership, and that to our teachers and our administrators, who we would not be anywhere near where we are with our plans at this point without their Herculean efforts, as John said. I'm going to steal your word. So, and with that, I think that completes everything that I was going to report out on today.
Very good. So this brings us to section 3, which is financial reports and motions. I'd like to take a consent for item 3.1 and 3.2. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
So moved.
Thanks, Leah and Sue. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Section 4, communications and comments from the public. I'm going to pull up my email because I received a number. And thank you for submitting them. As Dr. Champ referenced, we will not necessarily be able to answer each one of these questions. A number of the questions there are multiple questions in many of the emails, and some of them are very detailed, nuanced. I encourage people to tune into the sessions on Thursday evening. They will be recorded Thursday during the day, and they will be recorded if you weren't able to get into the system and sign on for them. Hopefully a number of your questions will be addressed in those sessions if they weren't already tonight. Okay, so the first comment comes from Danielle and Noam Gretz. Dr. Champ, what resources are going to be provided for families where both parents work Monday through Friday and do not have an au pair, babysitter, or any other form of childcare? Who is supposed to be with our child when we're at work? We need to be in school 100% of the week otherwise. Okay, this is from Jessica Calzoleo. I know I mangled your last name. I've never said your last name out loud, so even though we know each other, sorry. Okay, hello, Jessica. My question pertains to elementary education. It says comments directed to you. In the event of a hybrid plan taking place, would the learning that takes place on the off days be considered synchronous or asynchronous? With synchronous, has the district considered the time that younger children will remain on the screen and whether or not this is developmentally appropriate? In the event of asynchronous learning, would teachers, school, district be open to sharing curriculum, map, or like materials with parents who choose to navigate these waters themselves or reinforce as they deem appropriate for their own children? I'm concerned with the hybrid model and the continuity needed for some students, especially early elementary, and I'm very wary of how the broadcasting or similar delivery would work on days when students are not in physical attendance. Second question, if allowed, has the district considered half days, 5 days per week for early elementary and elementary with 2 groups of students a day? Okay. This question comes from Serena Connolly. What is going on with the special needs community? Will they be going back to school full-time or part-time? It's much more difficult for these families to find daytime care should their children be at home. So they need to know what the board or school decides ASAP. Thank you. Okay. This is from Tisha Clark. Dear Dr. Champ, Jessica, Julia, and Fareed, I hope you are all doing well this summer. I want to thank you all for your continued work to find a working solution for the varied and multifaceted needs of all the families in Pelham. In reviewing the options for remote learning, myself and others have the following questions regarding the preparedness of our district, particularly for the less self-directed elementary age. We'd appreciate if you could address the following questions. What training have the teachers had to prepare them for virtual classrooms? This includes how to engage virtual participation, manage students remotely, meaningful knowledge checks, and adjustment for individual needs as they do in a classroom. 2, what is the technology intended for remote learning to elementary age students, and how have the teachers been trained to use? What are the other Westchester school districts this has been benchmarked to? 1 camera to view the class will not suffice for elementary students. How many hours of virtual classroom training have the teachers completed, not only to learn the technology in question 2, but also addressing the needs in question 1? I empathize with how many questions you're receiving from concerned parents. Personally, I'm grateful for the involvement of our parent community, as well as the communication from our district leaders. To that end, I've tried to allow these conversations to happen and have not emailed with every one of my concerns. However, with the latest communication from the Tech Health Survey, my concern is heightened with the decisions being made. So I'd like to learn directly from you the training support for teachers have received so our children are receiving the best education from our district. I look forward to receiving your input. Okay. Allison Martin is an elementary parent. Why are parents not being given the right to choose distance learning? Why is the district creating barriers to this option? Okay, this is from Monica Hawkins. Why is it that other districts are offering the full remote choice to parents without stipulations, but you're asking our medical records if we decide to choose the remote option? This is flat out wrong. I shouldn't have to give my sensitive and personal health records to you for any reason. I'm not the student. You should be ashamed of yourselves for even asking the parents to send in their private records. It's an invasion and violation of privacy. It should be our right and our choice to keep our children home if we care about their safety, especially if there's a remote option available. If other districts are offering a choice to honor parents' personal feelings about sending their kids to school during this pandemic, you should as well. not demand a note from the doctor and access to our personal records that you have no right to, especially if we are not the ones in attendance. Okay, this is from Rebecca Lodi. This is Dear Dr. Champ, Eileen, and Jessica. Dawn and I, that's the PTA president, so and I have reviewed the district's reopening plan and met with our PTA executive committee to discuss it. Included below are the questions our team has after reviewing and discussing the plan. We look forward to participating virtually in the BOE meeting tonight and to learning more about the plans for this school year. Thank you for all of your effort, especially in this unusually challenging time. We are so grateful for everything the teachers, administrators, staff, and volunteers are doing. Best, Rebecca. 1, what kinds of face coverings will be sufficient on their own or in combinations? For example, does required face coverings and mask face coverings include wearing a shield as sufficient? What will the volunteer policy be for school buildings and outdoor spaces? And what can the role of the PTA be in the school building? 3, it sounds like the PTA will not be allowed to assemble for meetings inside the building. Are there guidelines for assemblies in the school's outdoor spaces? For example, will PTA be allowed to meet outside on school grounds for meetings or events? And if so, what limitations will there be on space, times, number of attendees, etc.? Number 4, will there be any extracurricular activities permissible on grounds, indoor or outdoor? 5, given the discussion of outdoor learning space, has the district come to any conclusion regarding outdoor space usage and protocol? Will cameras on virtual days be two-way? Specifically, how will students from home be able to ask questions if they do not understand a concept being taught? 7, particularly if the classroom camera feed will only be in one direction, will the classes be recorded and archived to enable students to revisit material? 8, for families with multiple young children, what is the expectation of parent participation on homeschool days? It is difficult to keep young children engaged online for extended periods of time. Working parents or parents with multiple children at home on these days may not be available to help at all times, which could lead to distractions, technical issues, etc. 9, how will the district accommodate virtual-only families who cannot participate in person due to health reasons and who are concerned about the amount of screen time posed in the district's plans, i.e. families who will need to cut out some of the proposed screen time virtual learning? 10, can the district pose and share pictures of the school spaces and ongoing developments in the buildings prior to the start of school? 11, what is the plan and curriculum for mental health and how will it be tweaked for returning students? 12, how will the district's family engagement policy change and how will we support families and students as we return? 13, is there a parent on each committee making decisions about the school building facilities? 14, the in-person plan states course and band will not be offered for elementary students at this time. Will there be any form of this in-person or virtual instruction in this area? Okay. Adam Regal. I have a question for the BOE meeting tonight. What is the modality of instruction for fall, hybrid, or virtual? If this decision has not been made, why not? When can we expect it? Dawn Belois. My question for tonight's meeting is twofold. My understanding is that the virtual instruction will be a one-way feed. 1, will children who are logged in virtually be able to ask a question in real time if they don't understand the concept or topic being discussed in the classroom? If so, how? 2, will daily instruction be recorded and archived for retrieval by both students and parent caregivers? If a child who is logged in virtually is confused about content, can't ask a question in real time, and no adult is there to assist because of work or they are helping a sibling on a simultaneous call/lesson, it will be imperative that a parent caregiver is able at some point to watch the lesson so they can work with their child to help them understand what they did not comprehend in that day's virtual lesson. This is especially true of younger elementary age children. And I have 2 more, which is good because my battery's dying on my iPad. Okay, this question comes from Caroline Davis, mother of a rising 7th grader. Has the district considered ways to limit how many students come into contact with one another during the school day? Could grades be divided into smaller teams? Could students have a few classes in one room instead of changing rooms every period? Could the teachers sometimes change rooms instead so there is less traffic in the halls and students are not switching desks as many times? What precautions will be taken during lunch? Is there actually any safe way to do chorus? And finally, Stephanie Cortian Royce. Good evening, Jessica. After carefully evaluating and speaking to many parents and teachers about the different options to returning to school this fall, if full-time school is not an option. I do believe splitting the school day to an AM PM schedule will give our children the most instruction time with their teachers. This will allow them to have academic learning, personal real life interaction, and then go home. Lunch and recess is not a priority for the time being spent at school. Having kids go 5 days a week allows for students to maintain consistency in their structured school routine. I understand the difficulties in every decision now more than ever, and I'm confident we will find a solution for our children together. Thank you, Beth Stephanie. So thank you to everybody who wrote in. As I said, I think we touched on a number of these questions tonight, and I imagine that Dr. Champ will be referring to many of them on Thursday. So hopefully you will be able to tune in as well. So, Eileen.
You're muted.
Sorry.
I thought you were saying I was muted. I'm like, really? After all of that? My heart just skipped a beat. Sorry.
Madam President, would you entertain a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thanks, John. Any questions or comments? On favor? Aye.
All right.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you.